So this Thursday is the full moon in Aquarius, and it's going to be a big one because it's stationed right in between Saturn in Aquarius, where it's been for the entire year, and Pluto at the final degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's responsible for the death and rebirth cycles. It brings to the surface our core wounds, our triggers, our deepest anxieties and fears a lot of the time, and it can feel really intense. It works in extremes. So in Capricorn, that's been responsible this entire year for transforming our world's relationship with work and hierarchical structures. So you can see that obviously playing out big time, at least out here in the West, but I think globally as well. So we've got the moon right in between all of that happening in Capricorn with Pluto. And then on the other side of it, in Aquarius, is Saturn. And Saturn is the planet of restrictions, delays, challenges, hardships. It slows things down, it gets in the way. And it really is sort of the planet of our ultimate long-term destiny. It can bring stability and structure, but because it's the great malefic, a lot of times it works in ways that can be quite uncomfortable. And in Aquarius, this is sort of that push and pull energy that we've been facing all year that is compelling us to seek greater freedom and make a lot of changes in our lives. And that's because one of the big highlights of this year is the Saturn-Uranus square. Uranus is in Taurus. It's the planet of great awakening. It's the planet of freedom and rebellion and chaos. So in this square with Saturn that we've had all year, this is exactly the energy that is causing us to make a lot of great changes in our lives. The other thing at play with this moon that makes it really special is the fact that it happens within 1 degree of where the Great Conjunction of 2020 occurred in Aquarius. So you probably saw this online. Astrologers everywhere were talking about this really rare event that happened when Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct in the sky in December 2020. So that was called the Great Conjunction, and it happened in Aquarius. That energy was really important for moving us into the age of Aquarius, and it's going to play out over the next 20-year cycle where all of society is going to look really different. At the highest manifestation of that energy, we're bringing the power back to the people. That's that humanitarian force that Aquarius is all about. And the lower manifestation of that energy is technology being used as a means of control, because Aquarius also rules over technology. And with that Saturn influence there, you can definitely see the fight in society playing out between sort of a revolution of where power is in our society and how that is being manipulated and controlled, especially through technology. In our personal lives, it looks a little bit different, that Great Conjunction. Think back to December 2020. What intentions did you set around that time? Those are going to be showing up as a culmination point around the time of this full moon, because of how close it is in degree and also because of the 6-month cycle of the moon. So this is a really beautiful time. Full moon represents culmination. It represents the completion of a cycle. It shows us the results of the hard work that we've been putting in, and it also illuminates what we still have to do. And so it can feel a little bit uncomfortable because it can reveal to us things that we have not yet acknowledged, things that we have been refusing to acknowledge, or just areas where we need to put in a little bit more work. So while this moon can be a little bit sticky, because of all of these forces that I just mentioned, Pluto, Saturn, and the way that it plays out our intentions back from December, there are some beautiful positive aspects happening just the day before the full moon on the 22nd. We've got an opposition between Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter and Venus are the benefics of the zodiac, and so they bring beauty, harmony, bliss, and good fortune. And so an opposition between the two of them can really bring a lot of good luck and positivity and ease and joy and optimism into our lives. And so I really am hoping that this aspect between them is going to stabilize a lot of the intensity that this full moon can show us in Aquarius. The only thing to note with an opposition between the two benefics is that it can sometimes create a little bit of overindulgence or excess in our lives. So I do think it's going to play out positively, but you always have to be mindful of ways in which you might just be overindulging a little bit. So what I wanted to do with us today is just take us through the 12 sign forecast for where this full moon energy is, and also where the Venus and Jupiter opposition is occurring in your charts by sign. So we'll go through all 12 signs. Just a note about the forecast here. It's really in your best interest to listen to your sun, moon, and your rising sign. That's going to give you the most complete picture of the energy that's happening this week. The sun will be sort of almost in a lot of cases a very literal translation of what's occurring for you in your life. Your rising sign is going to play out more on a psychological level. And then your moon sign will show you sort of your internal emotional world at the time of this full moon. So listen to all three to get a complete picture. And if you're new to astrology or you're interested in starting to make your own interpretations, I have a free astro guide that you can get at the link below in the description. It covers everything from the planets, the houses, the signs, and even the aspects, giving you keywords and significations for all of those things so that you can begin to make your own interpretations or even just make sense of the language that I'm using in my forecast. So check that down in the link below. And then I also wanted to share with you before we get started that I am offering natal chart readings. So if you're interested in diving deep into your own chart and seeing what we can unlock together, link for that is also below in the description. Okay, so let's get started with the forecast, beginning, of course, with Aries. So Aries, for you, this full moon is happening in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the planet of our social networks. And it also represents our larger long-term goals and our destiny in a way. So for you around the time of this new moon or this full moon, you're probably going to be seeing the results of the hard work that you've been putting in making some big changes to your networks. Chances are, because Saturn has been in this area of your chart for some time, there's been a lot of change and switch up related to your work networks because Saturn is significantly tied to our working relationships. So you've probably been making a lot of changes to your networks related to, your work, your income, your career, and the way that you are drawing in monetary resources. And you might have even been reevaluating the friendships in your lives and sort of the people that you have surrounding you, maybe getting rid of relationships that aren't supportive to you anymore and replacing them with more of a soul tribe kind of a network. So now during this full moon is where you can see a culmination of that work that you've been doing. This could sort of show up like a new friend that you've been waiting for comes in, or you finally are able to let go of an old relationship that is not of benefit to you anymore. Or perhaps you are seeing that your new networks at work are really benefiting you in a new way. So those are all sorts of things that can happen, as well as the fulfillment of long-term goals that you've had. That's what the 11th house represents. Now, the Venus-Jupiter opposition is happening in your 6th and 12th houses. These are the houses. The 6th house is the house of our daily routine, our work, and our health as well. So with Jupiter and Venus in these areas, you're liable to be feeling like you've got a really calm week. Things are really easy with your daily routine. You're able to kick back and take a break, or you're having a week where you're feeling really healthy, really vital, and things are going well. You might see good news in this area. The area to be careful is the 12th house. The 12th house represents our solitude, our rest, our reprieve, our spirituality. It can also represent addictive behaviors and patterns. So when we see an opposition between the two benefics, that can sometimes tend us towards a little bit of overindulgence. In the 12th house in particular, and with the 6th house representing health, we want to make sure that we are mindful of overindulgence, excess, laziness, falling back into addictive patterns. But overall, I think this is going to be a really, really restful week for you, where you've had a lot of big stuff happening for you lately and you're able to take it easy and sort of recharge this week. Okay, so moving on to Taurus. So for Taurus, the full moon for you is happening in your 10th house of career, public reputation, and the legacy you leave behind. This is a point where you're going to see the results of your hard work related to the changes you've been wanting to make with your career and what you do for a living. If you've been looking for a job, this is a week where you might see that you're able to make a lot of progress there. Maybe you get a call back or you're able to sign for a job. Perhaps this is the completion of a project that you've been working on that's really important to you, or significant progress in that area. It could even look like reward or recognition, or potentially it can be the other side, with that Pluto and Saturn in the mix. It can be maybe some feedback from a boss or higher authority, person that you admire, that shows you where you need to be doing things a little bit differently. Either way, this is going to be sort of a culmination period when it comes to your career and your work. If you're no longer working, the 10th house represents the legacy that you leave behind. So this could look like, public or social recognition from your contributions, or some forward movement with any type of volunteering work that you're doing. For the Venus and Jupiter opposition, you have this happening in your 11th and 5th houses. So the 11th is the house of our social networks, and 5th is the house of our pleasures, our passions, our joys, and our children, if you have them. It's also the house of romance. So this is a great week to be social. You're probably feeling like you have a lot going on in your social life this week, and it's a great time to spend with your connections. Good fortune and good opportunities can come to you through people in your life around this time, whether it's your kids, or maybe it's a date that you go on that ends up going really well, or you're able to connect with people who share the same passions for you, and you're starting to feel like you're actually connecting with a higher frequency tribe that you've been working on calling into your life. So this is a great week for that, and a lot of good things can come to you. Okay. So for Gemini, the full moon is happening in your 9th house. The 9th house is the house of publishing. It's the house of higher education, philosophy, wisdom, spirituality, our connection to God, our mindset and perspective on life. It's also the house of foreign travel and foreign relationships and cultures. So the full moon in this house will represent a culmination point, or a next level, next stage to your journey that you've been going through in this area, in terms of learning new skills, or maybe publishing a book, or an endeavor with philosophy and spirituality. You might have been working on purging old limiting beliefs and making your connection to God stronger. You might be reaching a culmination point with an important project regarding learning or teaching. That's exactly what the 9th house can represent when you have a full moon in this area. This could also be that you're able to make some progress with a foreign trip that you're looking to take. If you're trying to schedule a trip, maybe get a visa for long distance travel, this is a time where you can see some forward movement with those things. Now, the 10th and 4th house is where you have the Jupiter and Venus opposition, which is great news if you've been making a lot of progress with reshaping what your home life looks like and what your work life looks like, because that's what we've got with the 4th and 10th house. This is a time where things are moving beautifully. There's a lot of optimism and good fortune when it comes to where your situations with your living space or your family, ancestral healing, and where you live or your home. Maybe you're trying to purchase a home, get a loan for a home. This is a great week for forward movement in that area. And also with regards to your career, this is a time where you might be receiving praise from a boss or figure of authority in your life, or getting some social recognition from the work that you're putting out in the world. It's always a great time to make work that you are doing more visible and known when you have the benefic planets in the 10th house, because it's a time when those things will be received favorably. This is also a time when you're going to be probably striking the right balance between work-life balance. You might have been working really hard lately, and you're going to find it a bit easier to take some rest during this time. On the flip side, because Venus and Jupiter can create a little bit of overdoing it when they're in opposition like this. This could also mean that it really is time for a break and you're just doing way too much. So think about what your work-life balance looks like right now, and I think you'll find that you're able to strike the right balance nicely. Okay, so for Cancer, the full moon for you is happening in your 8th house. The 8th house, guys, it can mean so much. And typically when I have a lot of activity in my 8th house, it can be pretty sticky. The 8th house represents finances from the outside. So debt, investments, taxes, fees, fines. It also represents inheritances or insurance payouts. So on the financial level, the mundane material world, you might be seeing that at this point you're able to make some culmination point with your external finances. So maybe this is you finally get a payout that you've been waiting for, or perhaps you get a bill that you might have not been expecting was coming, or you're able to finally pay off some debt that you've been working really hard to pay off. And if there's money coming in related to that, a lot of the times it can come through your partner because the 8th house represents joint finances as well. But there's another side to the 8th house that I feel like is not often discussed or should be talked about more when it comes to a full moon. And that is that the 8th house represents our deep core wounds. The 8th house is Pluto's rulership. So everything I talked about with Pluto in the beginning is likely to be enhanced around this time. So our triggers, our fears, our anxieties, the deepest wounds that we have from childhood being, emerging around this time. The 8th house is also the house with sex, the house of sex and the occult. So this could look like the culmination of work that you've been putting in with occult studies or an occult practice. It could be a deep wound is deeply triggered, particularly if it relates to your partner or even your finances. Those things can emerge around this time, and it can be an energy where you can no longer avoid running from it, and you have to address it. So this one can be a little bit sticky. 8th house goes, the 8th house is intense. It works in extremes because of that Pluto energy. So hang on there, Cancer, but it's not all bad news because the Venus and Jupiter opposition is happening in your 3rd and 9th house. So for you, this is a great time for you to learn something new, apply yourself towards a new skill, shed old mindsets easily. You might have a lot of communications that are positive coming in this week to help support you. This is a good time to teach and share what you know with other people, or ideally, it's a great time to take a short trip. Because that 3rd and 9th house represent short and long distance travel. So if there's a chance that maybe you can get some reprieve from some of this intensity, you might be able to do that with a short trip around this time. Okay, and for Leo, the full moon is happening in your 7th house. So when you've got a full moon in the 7th house represents your most important close one-on-one relationships. So traditionally, this is the marriage partner, but this is also your very close lifelong friendships. It's also business partnerships that you work with one-on-one. So you can see kind of a commit or get out energy when it comes to the full moon. The full moon can't grow anymore, right? The light is at its point of fullest expansion and illumination. So in relationship, this looks like you're reaching a new level of commitment, a new level of partnership, whether that be with your primary romantic partner or a friend or a business partner. Something about this is going to move on to the next level, a new cycle. Or it can look like it can't expand or grow anymore and it's time to let go of it. The relationship has reached its maturity point and it can't go with you where you're going anymore. And so the full moon can really show you that it's time to let go and release so that you can move forward for what's next for you. So that's why I like to call it kind of a commit or get out type relationship with a full moon in the 7th house. But this can really be good news for a relationship, or it can mean the ending of an expired relationship. The Venus and Jupiter opposition is happening in your 2nd and 8th houses. So those are the financial houses. And I know, Leo, you've been doing a lot of work this year on figuring out how you're going to draw more income into your life and maybe finance a passion or change up the way that you exchange your time for resources. So with the benefic planets in your financial houses, this is great news. You might have extra money coming in around this time. When you are able to get that money, however, though, there might be a little bit of an urge to overspend or overdo it there. And I would caution you against that because you might want that money to be available to you later. So, when we have those planets of good fortune in our financial houses, it doesn't always mean that money rains from the sky, but it can mean that you've got some extra money coming in, whether it's through, a work project that's going well or whatever it is. Perhaps you even just find $5 on the ground. It can be as simple as that. But when there's extra money coming in, just be mindful of your urges to spend it, especially with that Venus placement that can make you want to overdo it, overspend. The other thing with 2 and 8, those houses, because 8 represents also the psychological wounds and the core wounds and triggers and our anxieties and fears. And the second house also represents things of value in general, including our self-esteem, our confidence, our self-worth, and our value, and also our diet and how we eat. This could be a time where you're reaching a culmination point with perhaps your relationship to food. Maybe you are implementing a change in regards to how you eat or treat your body, and maybe there's a lot of psychological wounding around that in the past. That could be the case with this energy too, where it reaches a culmination point and you know that you either need to make a change or you're able to see the progress and the results of the work that you've put in so far in those areas. Alrighty, so moving on to Virgo. For you, Virgo, the full moon is happening in your 6th house. So this is going to be a culmination point where you're able to see the results of the hard work that you've been putting in with your daily work, perhaps with your coworkers. It can be a time where a new person is onboarded to your team, you have a new subordinate, or you get a expansion in the team in some way. Or a project comes to completion, or there's a new project available to you. This can also relate to your health. So when you've got the full moon in the 6th house, you might also be putting in a lot of work to make some changes to your health. And there could have been over the past year a lot of upsets and potentially challenging issues regarding your health. And so if this is you right now, Virgo, this can be a culmination point where you're able to see the results of the changes that you've been making, or you're going to feel extremely compelled to move forward with some new changes that are illuminated to you around this time, and you'll know exactly what you need to do. The Venus and Jupiter opposition is happening for you in your 1st and 7th houses. So this is a really feel-good energy for overall optimism, feeling positive about the things that are happening in your life. So the 1st house is everything about you and your perspective and your body. So this is a supportive energy for the changes you've been making regarding to your health. And then the 7th house is the house of relationships. So you're going to see here, this is a great energy where your partnerships and close one-on-one relationships are feeling a little bit more supportive around this time. And so this is a good energy for just kicking it back and having deep connection with yourself and with others. Okay, for you, Libra, the full moon is happening in your 5th house. So this is kind of a culmination point with some work that you've been putting in the areas of your passions, your pleasures, what brings you joy in life. Perhaps you've been implementing new structures with your children. This is also going to be a relationship related to, an energy related to romance. And so Saturn's been in this house for you, so it might have been feeling like, relationships are just not coming easy for you around this time, or they're not even worth the energy of thinking of them, because Saturn causes that, delay and hardship energy. So it probably just feels like too much work right now. That could be the case. But you've got the full moon here that shows you the results of the work that you've been putting in these areas. The 5th house is also the house of not entrepreneurship, but of side hustles. So if you are looking to start a business, or you have been working on starting a business, this is a place where you can see that you're reaching a new level. And this will all tie back to the intentions that you set in December 2020 at the Great Conjunction. So think back to what you were thinking of at that time. It was probably related to connecting more with your passions or joys, or perhaps changing the nature of your relationships with your children. And all of that could involve starting a business. So you're likely to see the results of the work you've been putting in so far in those areas around the time of this full moon. And then for you, the Venus and Jupiter opposition is happening in your 6th and 12th houses. So this is a great energy for taking it easy in your routine. Your day-to-day routine is going to feel a little bit more relaxing. You're getting a little bit more solitude. You're getting more rest. You're getting a chance to take a break, or perhaps you really need to take a break right now and you're able to do that more easily with your schedule. So, health should be feeling a little bit better. You should be feeling pretty optimistic in these areas and experience a little bit more ease in terms of what your daily routine looks like. One word of caution with Venus and Jupiter in opposition in these houses, this can be a period of time where there's maybe a little bit of overindulgence, particularly in terms of addictive patterns, and you want to be mindful of how that can impact your health when you've got the 6th and 12th house opposition. It can be a period of a little bit of laziness, a little bit of overindulgence, so you just want to be mindful of that. But overall, I think this is going to be a really restful week for you. Okay, then we've got Scorpio. For you, the full moon is happening in the 4th house, and the 4th house is the house of home, property, family, real estate, and also our ancestral lineage and the traumas that are inherited through them. So you've been probably putting in a lot of work related to making some changes in this space. Perhaps you're looking to buy a home, make a big move. Perhaps there's been changes to what your family looks like recently. Maybe it's growing. Maybe you're adding new members to the family, or you're taking care of an older relative. It can be a culmination point of those things. Maybe you're making renovations to your house, acquiring new property, or working on resolving the trauma patterns that you've inherited from your parents and your family line. So this is the time period where you can see a lot of hard work and the results of that work that you've been putting in. And it'll also show you what remains to be done in the areas of home, family, property, real estate. The Venus and Jupiter opposition is happening in your 5th and 11th house. So this is a great time for connecting with your relationships, connecting to your joy, just following what lights you up this week, and connecting with the people who share the same passions as you. If you are looking to add children to your family, or you already have kids and you've been working on making changes with your relationship to your kids, you could see that things are feeling really good with your children this week. And it's a great week of opportunity when it comes to connecting with kids, connecting with our social networks, our friends, even our networks at work can all feel really good around this time. And you'll be exploring the things that really light you up. And so it's a pretty feel-good week in that regard. So if there's anything illuminated in your 4th house that looks a little bit sticky to you, I think you'll probably find that your social life is able to lighten things up a little bit for you this week. All right, so Sagittarius, the full moon is happening for you in your 3rd house. The 3rd house is the house of writing, short form writing in particular, short distance travel, media and communications, learning endeavors, and it's also the house of siblings and extended family members. So perhaps you've been interested in taking a new course around this time. This is a great week to do it. Maybe you've been looking at, maybe you've been working on a new skill. This is the point where you can see the results of your hard work and know exactly what left you have to learn. The 3rd house is also the house of entrepreneurship. So you're reaching a new level and seeing the results of the work that you've been putting in with your entrepreneurial endeavors. And if this involves short form writing or writing of any kind, you're able to reach a next turning point. It's a next stage of the journey for you regarding your endeavors with learning, writing, and even short distance travel. So it's a great time to take a short trip, even if it's just a day trip. Maybe it's, out of town 40 minutes. This is a great time to do it. You'll get clarity, opportunities can come to you when you do those things now. And it's because you've got that great good fortune energy supporting you in those areas. Alrighty, and so for Capricorn, the full moon for you is happening in your 2nd house. So Capricorn, you've been doing a lot of work lately on reforming your finances and taking a look at how you draw money in. Your financial picture has been changing over the past year, and so you're able to see now the results of the work that you've been putting in to pay greater attention to your finances, to make changes in this area, to create a more supportive living circumstance and make sure all your ducks in a row for the next stage. So you're going to see the results of the work that you've been putting in here, and you're going to know exactly what left needs to be done in order for you to have the financial picture that you're looking for. So for a lot of Capricorns, this can mean that the way that you're drawing in money is changing around this time, or it's time to change. Or perhaps you're retiring and you've had to take a closer look at your finances to figure out how you're going to make sure you have the abundance that you need and cultivate the level of prosperity that will support the lifestyle that you desire. So this is a time with the full moon where you're going to see sort of a culmination point of those things. This can also be a time regarding your self-worth and your confidence, where maybe your relationship to food comes up and you're able to see the work that you've been putting in around making changes to your diet and improving how you feel about yourself in general, because the second house is the house of value. The good fortune energy with Venus and Jupiter in opposition is happening in your 3rd and 9th houses. And so this is a time where perhaps you've been looking at creating new skills. It's a great time to take a course, learn something new, teach something that's important to you. A lot of good and benefit can come to you if you take a chance to, maybe teach what you know and what you're good at to other people. It's also a great time for taking a trip. And because the 3rd and 9th houses represent short and long distance travel, you will be able to do that more easily right now. And it could come as kind of sneaky opportunities. My cat is knocking on the door and she would like to come in, and she is not going to stop until I get her. So BRB. I have to make sure you can say hello to the person who is interrupting us. This is Lily. I call her Puff for short. She'll hang out with us for the rest of the forecast now, She's my witch cat. She has to be in the room when I'm doing witchy things, which includes astrology, so she'll just join us for the rest of the forecast. Okay, 2 more. So next we have Aquarius, and this full moon is happening in your sign Aquarius. So this is all about you. This energy is all about you. It's been a really big year for you, Aquarius. You've been changing everything in your life because some of these aspects have been hitting you super, super hard. And because you've got Saturn in your sign all year, it's demanding that you reevaluate everything, and it can make it pretty challenging to do so. So you're letting go of old patterns, old programs, old beliefs, things that are outdated and not serving you. You're making changes to your mind, your body, and your spirit. You've been making changes to where you live, how you live, what your family relationships look like. You've been making changes in your most important one-on-one relationships, even with your partner, and romantic relationships. You've been making changes at work. You've got new projects. You've got new ideas. This is a really big year. So think back to the intentions that you set in December of 2020 when we had the Great Conjunction. This is a time around the full moon where you're going to see a culmination of the work that you've been putting in. Things can come up all over the place when you've got the full moon in your sign. It's not pinpointed to one specific area. It's kind of a whole chart energy where things are going to reach a peak and then move on to a next level, sort of holistically in your life. And you'll be able to see exactly what remains that you still need to put a little bit more effort into around this time. So big week for you, Aquarius. You've got the good energy of Venus and Jupiter happening in your 2nd and 8th houses. So this is probably a week where money is looking pretty good. You might find that you've got a little extra money coming in, whether it's through your partner or some external place, or maybe you've just maybe you get a little raise at work or a bonus. Money is coming into you in some way, shape, or form while you have Venus and Jupiter in opposition in these houses. And it's also a great time to cash in on investments. So if part of you has been thinking about maybe selling some stocks or cashing in, this is a sign. Now is a really good time to be doing those sorts of things. However, just be mindful that when you have the 2 benefics in opposition like this, you can tend toward a little bit of excess. So you might have an urge to overspend around this time. So if extra money is coming in, and you want to buy yourself something nice that you've been thinking about for a while, it's a good week to do it. But just don't overdo it, because that can be part of this energy too. And you might be, kicking yourself later for not having saved that money. So, try to approach things with a little bit of balance in that regard. Okay. And then finally, we have Pisces. And so for you, Pisces, the full moon in the 12th house has been or will be a culmination point of all of the great, deep spiritual work that you've been doing and the solitude that you've been experiencing over the past year that has enabled you to really reflect on your patterns, your programs, and you've been in a place of sort of like cocooning so that you can be reborn as a butterfly, right? That's what this 12th house energy is about for you. And this week you're reaching a culmination point where things are really sort of clicking. You're starting to understand what this solitude has meant, what this period of rest and retreat has meant, all the things that you are outgrowing and all the endings and things that you are shedding and the things that you need to let go of in order to prepare for the next cycle. So the full moon is going to show you all of the work that you've done, and you're going to find that you're doing a lot better than you were before. But it's also going to show you what still needs to be worked on a little bit and what further needs to be released. And all of this is to prepare for the next cycle for you. So the more you can shed your skin now, the better off you're going to be later. So the full moon is really going to show you what still needs to be done in that regard. But you've got some pretty good news when it comes to the Venus and Jupiter opposition, which is happening in your 1st and 7th houses. This is an optimistic energy. You're going to be feeling really good. You're going to have hope and faith for what the future is going to look like for you. And a lot of the positivity is going to come from your most important one-on-one relationships, including the primary partner. So, sorry, excuse me. And so for you, this is a really beautiful energy for connecting deeply with your most important relationships, your deepest friendships that feel most aligned to you, having a great week with your partner, having soul-nourishing one-on-one connection, and just feeling good all around, having a lot of positivity and a good outlook about what the future holds for you. So it's a great week for Pisces. I know you've been doing a lot of work. So that is the forecast for the full moon in Aquarius, which is happening on Friday if you're in the Western Hemisphere. And the full moon energy is really active all week. So, you know, we've got this Venus opposition to Jupiter happening the day before the full moon. And the full moon is extremely active the day before, the day of, and the day after. So you're going to be feeling these things all week. And really think back to what was on your mind at the time of December 2020 when we had the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. I think you will find that that full moon this week is going to show you just how far you've come in regards to those intentions. So good luck with energy, Sarah.